Okay, it is 4 o'clock. I will call the November 20th, 2023 Salina City Commission meeting to order. I will first look at staff for confirmation that the Kansas Open Meeting Act required notice has been properly provided.
Yes.
Thank you. With that, may we have roll call?
Mayor Hoppick,
Here?
Commissioner Davis,
Here.
Commissioner Lankowitz,
Here.
Commissioner Longby,
Here.
Commissioner Ryan.
Here.
Thank you. Will those who are pleased able stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, that will lead us to awards and proclamations.
Item 3.1, proclamation of the date of November 25th, 2023 as Shop Small Saturday. Leslie Bishop, Executive Director of Salina Downtown Inc. will read the proclamation.
Good afternoon. Thank you for allowing me to be here. My name is Leslie Bishop, Executive Director of Salina Downtown. Whereas the government of Salina, Kansas celebrates our local small businesses and the contributions they make to our local economy and a community, and whereas Shop Small Saturday is an important holiday that isn't a day off, shopping in a local business district means less infrastructure, less maintenance, and more money available to beautify our community. And whereas spending locally instead of big box stores or online ensures that our sales taxes are reinvested where they belong, in your community. And whereas small businesses currently employ 61.7 million business employees in the small business employees in the U.S., which makes up approximately half of the U.S. workforce. And whereas nearly 6 in 10, 59%, holiday shoppers plan to participate in Small Business Saturday 2023. That is more than Black Friday at 56% of holiday shoppers. And whereas 96% of consumers shop small because of the personalized experience, unique products, and services. And whereas due to ongoing supply chain issues, consumers are more likely to find what they are looking for in a small local business. And whereas 58.1 million consumers plan to shop and eat small on Shop Small Saturday. And whereas the dollars that you spend on Shop Small Saturday make a difference beyond the retailer's doors. Small businesses create local jobs and pay local taxes, which keeps money circulating within our community. And whereas advocacy groups as well as public and private organizations across the country have endorsed the Saturday after Thanksgiving as Small Business Saturday. And whereas the holiday season is all about giving, and the best gift you can give a local business is your support. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Michael L. Hoppick, Mayor of Salina, Kansas, do hereby proclaim November 5th, 2023 as Shop Small Saturday, and urge the residents of our community to support small businesses and merchants on Small Business Saturday and throughout the year.
Okay, thank you. I think you said November 25th, not November 5th. I want to make sure everybody
November
heard that.
25th.
And so we've already had a busy period in the downtown. So is there anything special planned for this Saturday downtown?
Well, all of our businesses are going to be open, and not only retail, but our local eateries. So they're welcoming everyone into their stores for the day after Thanksgiving. And the best part about it, there's plenty of parking, but you can walk off your turkey and your pumpkin pie while you shop. And then going in further on, we'll have pictures with Santa downtown to encourage people to come downtown. We're going to have a holiday art market on the 2nd of December. And of course, we have our first Friday, the 1st of December. So there's a lot happening in downtown Salina, and it all kicked off last weekend with a great lighting of the mayor's Christmas tree and our parade of lights.
Thank you for all you do downtown.
That's a good question.
Yes.
Are the lamp poles set up with speakers yet? And I know that we had talked about it, where you can have seasonal music.
Not yet.
Not yet? Okay.
We've, the board of directors for Salina Downtown Incorporated, we've brought it to the table. It's has quite a price tag to it, but that's still something we are looking at.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you for all you and your staff do downtown. Downtown looks wonderful, and thank you to the merchants that have decorated their windows. I love this time of year myself, and
Well, if I may add that our merchants are happy. In fact, we had one store last week tell us that they reached their 2022 sales in October of this year. So they already reached what they made in 22 in October. So that's very exciting.
okay, shop Saturday the 25th, but don't let it stop there.
That's right.
All right.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Okay, that will lead us to the consent agenda.
Item 5.1, approve the minutes of the meeting of November 13th, 2023.
Okay, are there any corrections or additions to the minutes? If not-
Mayor, I move we approve the minutes of the meeting of November 13th, 2023.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve consent agenda item 5.1. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That passes 5-0. That will lead us to administration.
Item 6.1, approve Charter Ordinance 43 on second reading, exempting the city of Salina from certain parts of Chapter 308, Senate Bill 508, of the Session Laws of 1937, as amended by Chapter 250, Senate Bill 341, of the Session Laws of 1939, an act authorizing certain cities of the first class to convey certain property to the Board of Education of such city.
Okay, thank you. Charter ordinance number 43 was passed on first reading on November 13th. Since that time, no comments have been received. Is there any questions or comments from the commission?
Nope.
From the public? Okay, if not, I will bring it back to the commission for action.
We approve Charter Ordinance number 43 on second reading.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second to approve Charter Ordinance number 43 on second reading. May we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Davis?
Aye.
Commissioner Lankowitz?
Aye.
Commissioner Longby?
Aye.
Commissioner Ryan?
Aye.
Mayor Hoppick?
Aye. That item passes 5-0.
I'd like to.
Yes.
A slight procedural question. Our official newspaper has to be published in Saline County. If the paper is printed in McPherson, does that, I was just talking with someone today about it and about something else, and I said, yeah, I know it has to be published in the county, but does that include printing, or do they?
Well, a couple of things. Published, I think it's published or distributed in the county, so I don't know that it's necessarily where it's printed.
Print,
but then,
okay.
as you may recall, we've also done a charter ordinance, which it allows us greater latitude. That you initially passed, the protest period has run, and then staff will be bringing back the question of who to publish with.
Okay.
Or publishing it on our website.
Okay, thank you. That was it. I had a conversation earlier about something totally different. I said, wow, we're going to pass something that has to be published today. I was just curious.
Yeah, and I'm working from memory. I would have to double check, but I think it's a circulation in the county, not necessarily
printed,
actual
okay.
physical publication.
Thank you.
Okay, that will lead us to item 6.2.
Item 6.2, approval of Salina Area Chamber of Commerce 2024 legislative agenda.
Okay, Mr. Wood is out today, so I will look at City Manager Scragg for take the lead on this item.
Certainly happy to fill in. As you may recall, we have kind of a coordinated effort through the Chamber of Commerce to have community representation at the Capitol, and we've had good luck, had good feedback, not only from our elected delegation, but from others that it's noticeable that Salina comes with kind of a unified message and that makes an impression on them. So something that we've been doing for a while is a chamber legislative agenda or a community legislative agenda agenda. Renee Duxler from the Chamber is here, and the Chamber facilitates conversations with the entities that are shown there in the staff report. So Saline County, the Economic Development Organization, the Airport Authority, the school district, Salina Technical College, KU School of Medicine, the Kansas State University, Salina Regional Health Center, Salina Family Health Center, and ourselves, among others, are brought together. We look at kind of past legislative priorities, things that we know might be coming or things that have developed in the past year, and then look at the individual community priorities or organizational priorities that each of us have. So with respect to the city, the things that we included were Magnolia Road, identifying it at a cost of $10 million and seeking any type of funding or support that we might be able to gain at the state level there, and that's on pages 5 and 6 of the document. Holmes Road on page 7 at $11 million. There's a provision in there speaking to fair competition. You may recall last year and in years prior there was legislation about if a taxing entity was involved in conduct such as that competed with a restaurant or a health club, as an example, there was legislation that would make health clubs and restaurants tax exempt. The language that's in the Chamber legislative agenda is fairness going forward. So existing operations not necessarily invoking that exemption, but if a future operation did, then that approach might be in place. That's something that's been discussed, and there's a lot of devil in those details at the legislative level, but could have significant implications on our tax base. If you think about the Salina Senior Center, the field house concession area, the golf course concessions being a basis of restaurants or other operators claiming a tax exemption. On the federal level, the thing probably most noteworthy is our recognition of our efforts with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers to pursue funding for the Smoky Hill River ecosystem restoration. Be happy to answer questions, but they do have a program in place kind of recognizing the impacts that prior Corps of Engineer projects have had on the community. And with them installing the bypass years ago, that creates an opportunity for us to seek funding with the Corps. That's been an ongoing conversation that we've been having, and our federal delegation's aware of that, but we've incorporated that into the legislative priorities as well. So looking for $13.7 million of federal funding to add to the $22.1 million of raised grants and the funding that we have by way of the 2016 sales tax initiative to kind of bring that project to a head. And Renee's here to speak if you have questions about the process more broadly. I did want to acknowledge that I reported in my city manager update last week that we were contacted by the Lieutenant Governor's office about endorsing Medicaid expansion. And while that's not something that we've talked about as a group, it is something that has come up from the medical players in this consortium. And so Medicaid expansion is in that chamber legislative agenda. As I said, we really haven't discussed that as a group. I don't claim to be a subject matter expert. I've done enough research to maybe be able to provide you a little bit of a timeline if that's of interest. But there were a number of other participants in this process that were pretty strongly advocating for Medicaid expansion from the service side for the people that benefit from it, as well as the service provider side that struggles either financially in terms of reimbursement as well as providing those services. So without wading into the pros or cons of that, I did want to acknowledge that it does include a recommendation for Medicaid expansion. With that, the intention would be that you would endorse the legislative agenda. It is strategically put together so that individual items are a one-pager that can be pulled out. So as we talk to our legislative representatives or others, we can pull out the Magnolia Road portion of the document or the Holmes Road portion of the document and use that as kind of a talking piece as we try to lobby for those. I would tell you as well, somewhat complementary to this, our work with Eric Sexton as a shared lobbyist amongst the groups. We were able to set up an opportunity for the county administrator and myself to meet with the Secretary of Transportation when they had their event here in town, and the evening before meet and talk about Magnolia Road and everything that's going on with housing and kind of the justification for that. He acknowledged that, provided some suggestions of different funding sources, and then we were able to very strategically enter that into the conversation at the event the next day, and so much so that it was acknowledged as something that kept coming up and deserved KDOT taking a look at. So haven't heard any more. We did apply for a cost share grant for the third time now for Magnolia, and that review process took place a few weeks ago, but they haven't made any announcements one way or the other. So with that, I'd pause and try to answer any questions you might have about the legislative agenda process or content-wise.
Okay, I'll look to my left to see if there's any.
No questions or comments.
Are these issues that a lobbyist will contact legislators on an individual basis as the need arises, or is this something that we're going to
Actually, the chamber
make a proactive, deliberate attempt to let folks know how our community feels about these?
The chamber organizes a couple things in that regard, so I'll give Renee the opportunity to explain that.
Yeah, good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm Renee Duxler, President and CEO of the Salina Area Chamber of Commerce. So as Mike sort of alluded, this document is kind of broken up into several pieces. So certainly the first couple of pieces, both the state and the federal funding requests, are those sort of one-sheeters that we definitely pull out and quote-unquote lobby for as needed. The state policy priorities and the federal policy priorities are sort of kind of reference notes. Yes, we support this. We look to our other partners to do the majority of the lobbying on those issues. We don't necessarily really dig in on our policy priorities, but we do acknowledge to our state delegation and our federal delegation that these are things that we support. And so, for instance, I think Kansas Wesleyan has their community resiliency hub on there. That's something that they really push for, and we just sort of state that we support it and we are behind them on that. But we don't necessarily get into the weeds on those priority issues as much as we do on the funding requests.
You might touch on the legislative forum here in the community as well as Day at the Capitol.
Yes, and so then we do have the two events. Thank you, Mike. So we do do a round table with our federal and state delegation that we invite all of our partners to, where we present this agenda to them so that they can ask questions of us and get anything sort of cleared up in terms of what's on this agenda. And then we also do the Salina at the State House, usually in March, and we've yet to set a date for that this year, but it's usually sometime in March that we bring our partners along with other chamber members, anybody in the community, honestly, that's interested to join us as we go to the State House and also present on some of these items.
And two issues in particular, the support community choices and evaluating fair competition on page 13.
Mm-hmm.
The way it's framed, it implies that this is a given that's going to happen. It's a concession approach to this topic. I'd much rather, and I'm speaking obviously for myself here, say, I'm against this type of legislation.
Sure.
There are some things that cities, public entities do that private citizens or businesses also do, but rarely do they have the risk, that public, and we can't refuse anyone, we're not necessarily doing it to make a profit for shareholders. I mean, we have a lot more at risk than someone who chooses to just happen to be doing something similarly. And we can't give up too much more of our tax base. This is just a very slippery slope. I mean, it's either going to get the public entities out of doing things that no one else would do for citizens, or it just makes an easy way to get a tax exemption for business, which is usually, on a much grander scale. So that's the reason I'm wondering, to whom is this message going.
Well, I would acknowledge that's a very keen observation. Not to deflect, but I think our lobbyist has suggested that we take this approach rather than just all-out opposition, just because it has been such a topic of conversation. This is kind of a balanced approach. We can certainly continue to, register our opposition to the concept altogether. But if that's not successful, then this is kind of the fallback of the legislature. If you're going to do something, at a minimum, let's have that be a break point from this point forward, not punish for the existence of the senior center or the field house pre-existing the legislation. And this is really targeted at that legislation previously lobbied hard by Genesis Health Club that communities are competing with them as a health club, and so they should get a property tax exemption.
Yeah, well, he's also trying to make a profit. We aren't, so.
Correct.
He's free to offer whatever service he wishes and charge whatever he wishes, and those who don't want to come to ours can certainly go to his.
So,
But, we've had boys clubs all along, for centuries, police boys clubs and all those things, and people can choose to come there or go to their own private clubs.
Yeah,
In fact, a lot of private clubs have set up because people don't want to come to ours.
Well, I do think we'll continue to take the stance that we don't support the legislation. We'd prefer it not be passed, but at a minimum, if you're going to entertain anything, then take this balanced approach rather than kind of a retroactive approach.
Yeah, just kind of like not to have our compromise as our starting, not much to fall back on after
True.
that. And the other question was on the next page, expansion of Medicaid. I believe Lawrence, the city of Lawrence has gone so far as to actually enact a resolution declaring it is clearly in favor of Medicaid expansion, gives the economic and social reasons for it, primarily economic. Here in Salina, we have a lot to gain, just the economic driver for expansion of Medicaid, and not to mention cities much smaller than us who are now without hospitals because of the lack of Medicaid expansion. We're seeing people anyway. It's a question, do you get paid some for seeing people or get paid none? And if we want to build our workforce, they have to have access to health care, or employers need help providing this when they don't have the money to provide cost-efficient health care options. I would like us to be very proactive. The legislature has kicked this around for 7 or 8 years now, and someone, I think, has to let them know that there are cities representing lots of people who think it's time to, get up off the seat and do something about this.
Sure.
And I think cities taking a stand is a very positive role. There won't be any question as to whether it's a lobby. No, this is a city that has made a statement.
Yeah, I think if the city wanted to do the resolution,
It would have to be separate from this, obviously.
Right,
I mean,
right,
this is a
exactly.
fair statement.
Right.
But again, who's going to hear this message?
And that's, I will point out again that we do have our healthcare organizations, we have our small businesses, we have a number of people that do support Medicaid expansion in the community, and they really kind of do the majority of that lobbying effort. We, state that we support it, certainly, but we don't do a large lobbying off of these policy priorities. So if there is a desire to do more of that, then that certainly would be something that would be an option. But
love to see 100 cities pass,
Yes.
and take that to peak and say, okay, now let's have a.
If it's helpful, and just to clarify, as Renee said, I think that input came from medical providers. If you were to pass this, then I think we would characterize it as the City Commission was aware of the inclusion of the expansion of Medicaid in that agenda, and so, it somewhat indirectly but knowingly supported the expansion of Medicaid. Conversely, we've never really had it come up before where we take exception to a particular item and carve that out in some way. But if you, on the flip side of the issue, as a governing body said we don't want to go on record as supporting it, we could walk you through that. Then above and beyond that, if you as a governing body said we want to go on record more formally than this, then that would be in the form of a resolution. we don't have Salina as an organization doesn't have a track record of taking those type of actions on items beyond our general purview, but I certainly understand your point, and it has been a topic of conversation for going on 6 years now, and bounced around the legislature, and continues to be a topic of conversation statewide.
It has been on our agenda for a number of years as well, so this isn't the first year that it's coming up either.
Right, but the cities and small communities are bearing the brunt of the
Sure.
legislature's inability to act on this. You know, so
There is, in trying to remain objective, but in reading what information I can find, there is definitely a school of thought that rural hospitals financially suffer, and this would help them financially. Don't know if, in terms of being sustainable and getting reimbursed for medical services they're providing.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, there's a lot I like in here, but there are some that I do not, and I am opposed to Medicaid expansion, and I feel Commissioner Davis and his employer stand to benefit from Medicaid expansion, so I see a conflict there. And I really don't think it's the city or the chamber's place. It is going to be a legislative topic the governor is going to push really, really hard on, and I think it needs to stay there in the legislature. Would like to come back to Magnolia Road, because I just think that is the most important key to what's happening in Salina right now, is securing funding and getting that project kicked off. And as a municipality, that's our primary function, is infrastructure, roads. And all this stuff, it's like everyone wants to grab the free money. Well, it's not free. The government's printing it, and it's causing more and more inflation, and the burden all comes down to the taxpayers. But we approved the engineering study on Magnolia, correct?
Correct. So, yeah, we are simultaneously pursuing it as if it's a city project, but then trying to secure any additional funding that we can.
Yeah, and we all put in plugs with the DOT and.
Yep. And not to interrupt, but I think there is broad consensus among all the groups as we put this together that Magnolia was the highest priority.
Right. So can you give us any update on where the engine, seemed like the engineering was like $400,000.
Yeah, I don't know a whole lot off the top of my head. We're waiting to hear back on the cost share from KDOT, and I know the design work's underway, but beyond that.
But the design work is going forward.
Yeah, and I can provide you a more detailed update coming out of that. But as it relates to this is kind of continuing that emphasis on Magnolia being a priority and trying to pursue any funding that we can.
Just the positive comments I've received from the overlay of Magnolia Road, that's where the citizens want to put their money, and the lobbying efforts, and then the river project. It would really be nice to really get that to roll. So, yeah, I hate to oppose this whole package over one item, but.
If it's helpful, you could make a motion to amend and take our expansion of Medicaid out. Most likely that would, I don't know how Renee would then report that different entities supported different elements of the legislative agenda, but that would be an option.
Well, I think Ms. Dexler already stated that wasn't on the top of the list, so.
It's not. So.
But now, does the whole list go or part of the list? That's the reason I'm again asking, to whom is this being directed?
It does get directed to the state and federal delegation. We go through this line item by line item with them, go over it, answer questions.
Now, by state delegation, you mean our local state delegation?
Our local state delegation as well as our federal representatives, both. And so we go through it with them, we answer questions, but as we move forward, go to the State House, our primary sort of priority are those funding requests and not necessarily the policy priorities. Those will get voice throughout the community with these other organizations, but we as a chamber and as our sort of partnership with Eric Sexton will talk about the funding requests.
'Cause the funding, I'm assuming we would have to go beyond our local representatives for certain types of.
And then that does occur, yes, that does go beyond when we go to the
Yeah,
State
with
House,
the,
for sure.
right, the day at the Capitol is an opportunity to lobby others. And just to be abundantly clear, and I'm having to speculate a little bit, but I received a communication last week. For whatever reason, it wasn't directed to the governing body. It was just directed to me as the city manager, but it was from a staff member in the lieutenant governor's staff asking that we consider formally supporting Medicaid expansion. So and this is where I'm speculating a little bit, but I think they probably will double back and try to inventory cities that have supported Medicaid expansion. So if this is passed by you as the governing body, and the lieutenant governor's office asked me, what did the city commission do with respect to Medicaid expansion? My response will be that you voted to approve the community legislative agenda, that, assuming that you do, that included Medicaid expansion. Kind of stop short of you passing a formal resolution independently, but I would point to this. That all assumes that that is the outcome of your vote, which is yet to be decided.
Okay. Would you like my rebuttal to Commissioner Lombard now, or?
Sure.
Or what?
No,
Okay.
go ahead.
I think it needs to be abundantly clear. I'm not here representing Salina Regional Health Center,
Understood.
all right? I'm here as a steward of the city of Salina. Every uninsured patient that hospital takes care of gets passed on to us in form of our Blue Cross premiums. So I'm looking at the money the city of Salina is paying for its employees. Anyone out here with any private insurance, you're paying for that uninsured care now. You're just not paying it through your taxes. You're paying it through your every 2-week payment or your monthly payment for your health insurance premiums. So it's getting paid one way or the other. Don't think that hospitals are just giving this away free. You know, it's like if stores have a lot of pilferage, they raise the prices on what they do sell. So it's a question of do we want to pay for it up front, or you want to pay for it yourself? But, you know, I'm looking at our bottom line, because that's one of the major consequences of treating uninsured.
Well, I just chip in that I agree with you, Commissioner, and you know, I think it is a cost to us, and it's unfortunate. I'll just say this about the leadership of the legislature. I think they've gone down this road and just don't want to back away from it. I don't know if it's an ego thing, or we're way down the road and have seen the results of what this policy has decided, and I agree that it's time for a change.
And I'll just say real quick, we put an emphasis on the healthcare partners who have sort of weighed in on this, but we do also have a lot of small business owners who see this as an advantage too. So it's not just the healthcare community that does support this. Our board, you know, passes this. It is our business members as well. And so I hate to make that look skewed that it is just on them. We do have our small business owners who see the benefit of having a workforce with this. So I'll
Ms.
throw that in
Drexler, I appreciate you and the chamber coordinating this statement, because these are 9 important organizations in our community, and they speak and touch a lot of people. So I think it's an important position paper on our opinions, and thank you for making that happen.
And you know, our efforts to expand childcare here. You know, small child care providers cannot afford to pay health insurance premiums. And, you know, Kansas has a lot of loopholes in its Medicaid eligibility. And, you know, this would be a great way, one, to ensure that people taking care of their kids, if they get sick, they can go see the doctor, so they don't have to, you know, just not be present for 2 weeks. And it will bring people, you know, back into the workforce if they don't have to worry about, you know, spending all of their income on a expensive health insurance policy.
Commissioner Linkwitz? Well, I think this is kind of a outline of things for the legislation to look at. again, we've talked a lot here about expansion of Medicaid. I'd rather have it in this document than us sign one as a commission, because before we would do that, I hate to say this as a business owner, but I'm not up to speed enough to know which one of these two gentlemen is right and who's wrong. So I think this is one way to certain entities want that looked into, and again, it's going to be decided at the state level and not at the city level. So
Yeah,
it's
I have
kind
no
of an
problem with
outline.
this document
Yeah.
at all. It'd be-
Yeah.
If down the road later we want to do something, but yeah, this, I
That would
send
take
this on.
that
yes.
would take more
Yeah.
consideration, and I always like it now that we just had an election. Everybody says, being a voice for the public. Well, sometimes you're a voice for part of the public and not for the other, and that's what we run into. And this would be one that I'd have to study a little more and stuff. So
Can I ask one more small question? Our Fulton Siefken representative, I assume that the 9 entities are splitting the cost of that, and what's it cost for a good lobbyist?
Well, it's not all 9 that are splitting the cost for that, and I know we have an equal share amongst 4.
There's going to be 7 total of us this coming year because Kansas Wesleyan
Oh, okay.
has come on board. So these 9 partners, really that policy priority is kind of where all 9 weigh in. Those funding requests are where, again, because we put our time and effort and investment into that government affairs consultant with Fulton Siefken, that's where that group weighs in, are on the funding requests. And we sort of make that sort of consensus on what our funding requests are going to be and what our asks are going to be of, again, both our state representatives and our federal representatives.
Do you recall
that help?
Do you recall the number? I know.
Oh, I'm sorry. So then the total number is 63,000 for this coming year, and it'll be divided 7 ways, so 9,000 each group.
Is that right?
Sounds cheap.
okay, are there any questions or comments from the public on this? Okay, if not, I will bring it back to the commission for action.
Mayor, I move that we approve the Salina Area Chamber of Commerce 2024 legislative agenda.
Second?
We have a motion and a second to approve the Salina Area Chamber of Commerce 2024 legislative agenda. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That item passes 5-0. So.
Mayor, if you're willing, I think the City Legal Counsel has a comment to add, or an explanation maybe.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. Just wanted to make sure that there was reference made to a conflict of interest, and obviously my role is not to sound as though it is affecting outcomes, but it is correct that Commissioner Davis has a substantial interest as an employee of Salina Regional Health Center, if I'm correct in that, and that I assume has been disclosed on your disclosure statement.
First one on the list.
Yeah, I think it might be. Because we are not in a contractual situation, but in this type of issue, the question I thought others might have is whether it was appropriate for Commissioner Davis to participate in the vote. When you have a substantial interest that has been disclosed that does not involve a contractual obligation, then it is appropriate and lawful for anyone who has that disclosed substantial interest to participate in the vote. So didn't know if anybody had a question about that, but thought we should address that.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that explanation. Okay, that will lead us to item 6.3.
Item 6.3, insurance agreement renewals. Item 6.3A is to authorize the city manager to execute renewals of agreement for administrative services for a self-funded health and prescription benefit plan and individual and aggregate stop-loss coverage with Blue Cross Blue Shield of Kansas. Item 6.3B is to authorize the city manager to renew Delta Dental of Kansas Inc. agreement for dental care benefits. And item 6.3C is to authorize the city manager to approve an amendment to the agreement with Tria Health for medication therapy management.
Ms. Fisher.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Commissioners. I have provided you a rather lengthy staff report, but I will attempt to keep my presentation to you today brief in comparison. 3 areas that City Clerk mentioned for consideration, and I will break these down to provide a little bit of additional information on each one. The first one being the Blue Cross Blue Shield agreement. This is a renewal. The services that Blue Cross and Blue Shield provide include administration of our benefits plan for both health and prescription, as well as stop-loss insurance. The city is self-funded, so rather than pay premiums directly to insurance companies for this type of coverage, we put that funding into a health fund and then pay those expenses out, both from the administration, the stop-loss, the claims, and other related insurance or other related expenses that come up that are needed because of having a self-funded plan. With Blue Cross, they do administer the health insurance and dental insurance as well as provide that stop-loss. Just the stop-loss, you might recall, is like a high-deductible plan. It prevents our fund from being bankrupted in the event we have a bad claims year. 2 different types of stop-loss insurance that are covered, both individual, with the proposal is for $175,000, so if one of our plan members would have claims that would exceed that, from the time they exceeded, the rest of those expenses are covered by that stop-loss insurance. So that's the individual stop-loss. And then the group stop-loss or the aggregate stop-loss is in the event our claims were having a bad year in general and we exceed 130% of the expected claims. So in terms of the pricing that was provided to us, we are looking at approximately a 17% increase in that stop-loss insurance. That is where the increase is coming from. There will be fluctuation throughout the year if we renew, and there always is, because every month our employee, both our employee count as well as who is covered on our plan, fluctuates up and down and may even fluctuate between the different types of coverage, such as the single, the employee plus one, the family. So it's hard to come up with the exact dollar, and that's why everything is projected based on at one point in time where our participants are enrolled in that coverage. I'm going to jump ahead and briefly cover the other 2 renewals that are being considered. The next one is Delta Dental of Kansas. It's a little bit different structure because they charge us on a per member per month basis. We pay a flat dollar amount of $4 per those, and then the claims for the dental care. This is capped, so after the $1,500 of benefit is reached, that's back on the employee in terms of that expense. There was no increase being proposed by them. In fact, they extended the 2023 rate to both 2024 and 2025 should we enter into a 3-year agreement, and then in 2026 increase that to $4.05 per individual. And then lastly, Tria Health. Tria is a little unique that it is a prescription medication therapy program. It's not a direct benefit that is actively being applied to every one of our employees, but for those that may have more prescriptions, may fall into a high-risk category, there's incentives that are being offered to those individuals for a variety of different things, such as maybe medical supplies, diabetes strips, or providing them free generic prescriptions or discounted name brand to make sure that individuals are complying with the prescribed medication, because the expense to the health plan, if they were not doing so, would be much more significant than the cost of those incentives. So those are briefly the three types of renewals that you are being asked to consider and approve today. I will talk a little bit about our projected expenses and what that looks like in terms of budget. When we looked at the anticipated expenses, we reprojected those based on these renewal numbers. And then we went back and compared those to how we budgeted. And you might recall, in terms of the budget, we were looking at a 7.5% increase. We were looking at both an increase in our employee census, thinking we are going to be hiring more employees over the course of 2024, but then also a 7.5% increase in terms of our internal premiums. So sharing that 7.5% increase between the employee and the city. The city pays approximately 80% of that premium, and the employee kicks in the other 20%. We never like to have to increase, but I will note that we have not had an increase since 2018, so feel very blessed there. When we took a look at that, we are projecting that we might be lowering the fund balance for the health fund slightly, but just in terms of financial capacity and where we are projecting, we don't have the magic ball, or that crystal ball, but in terms of the capacity financially and where it's trending with the expenses, where we think they'll land, and taking into account the increases in claims, we do anticipate that with what we have budgeted, with that 7.5% increase, we can afford what is being presented to you today. It still will leave us within our minimum and our maximum target fund balance that we had set by policy, and that was explained as well. Before I pause for any questions, I will also mention that Mr. Charlesworth, our insurance consultant, is available via Zoom should you have any questions for him or anything that I will be unable to answer.
Okay, I will start over here to my right. Any questions or?
What is the employee head count today?
We are at 444 employees.
So we've come up a bit. Okay. Yeah, if you've not passed on an increase since 18, are people happy with the insurance?
I believe so. A lot of times we hear more so if people end up, for whatever reason, transitioning to other plan and then have the luxury of coming back. That's when we hear the most, but I do believe our employees are happy with our plan. We are looking on how to communicate some of our benefits and the value of those, both to our internal employees as well as from a recruitment standpoint. So we do think we probably don't boast on that enough, but
yeah,
I do think.
I've reviewed the plan, and I think that's a pretty good plan. And I used to tell people I work with, you've never had bad insurance. So, yeah, I hope employees realize that this is probably as good as they're going to find. So.
Okay. To my left.
No questions?
Yeah, I don't believe I have any. I think the method we've been using, it seems to be working. I'm not sure what we would do differently. Healthcare continues to be a major concern for any employer, so I guess when I look at our numbers and what we're still able to offer the employees and at the rates that we're able to do that, I'm very satisfied. So.
Yeah, and I apologize if I'm telling you things you already know, but as Ms. Fisher described, being self-insured, we're using Blue Cross Blue Shield. We pay the claims. We get the benefit of the negotiated rates that Blue Cross Blue Shield has with different providers. So that conversation that played itself out for quite some time in terms of Blue Cross Blue Shield and Salina Regional Health Center and the negotiation of those rates certainly had our attention. It has a direct financial impact on us as one of the major providers of services for our employees. And I do think that the outcome of that conversation was a slight increase, and I think that's going to be an ongoing conversation over the next few years. And as Salina Regional tries to gradually adjust their rates to where they intend to be. So I think there will be ongoing negotiations between Salina Regional and Blue Cross Blue Shield. And if we continue to be a Blue Cross Blue Shield customer, then that'll have a direct financial impact on our expenses as a self-insured going forward. So that's something that we've been lucky to not have rate increases for a number of years, and we're going to do everything we can to minimize those, but something that is going to have our attention going forward.
And most employees, I don't think, understand the benefits of a negotiated rate either. You know, when they look at their statement, they just see what they owe. I think sometimes they don't appreciate that negotiated rate as much as they should. So that's very beneficial to them. So.
It's very hard to understand
Yeah.
as an end user. I'll acknowledge that for sure.
So, okay, are there any comments or questions from the public?
Norman Manuel Salina, have you ever thought about going out of state for your insurance? There are other companies that will pay a lot better. I used to work for a company, got 100%, everything was paid for. So it's available. Start looking at Connecticut General. They paid my health insurance 100%. So it's there. You're gonna have to go out of state.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, with that, I will bring it back to the commission for action. Appears we have 3 action items.
Mayor, I move we authorize the city manager to execute an agreement to provide administrative services for a self-funded health and prescription plan benefit and individual aggregate stop-loss coverage with Blue Cross Blue Shield of Kansas for a 50/50 cost plan structure with individual stop-loss at $175,000 in the amount of $885,705.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion, a second. I'm not sure how else to do this, but read the entire thing again. To authorize the city manager to execute an agreement to provide administrative services for a self-funded health and prescription benefit plan with individual and aggregate stop-loss coverage with Blue Cross Blue Shield of Kansas for a 50/50 cost-share plan structure with individual stop-loss at $175,000 in the amount of $885,705. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That item passes 5-0. That will bring us to item 6.3B.
Item 6.3B is authorizing the city manager to renew Delta Dental of Kansas Inc. Agreement for dental care benefits.
Mayor, I move authorize the city manager to renew the Delta Dental of Kansas agreement for 3 years at the per member per month rates of $4 in 2024 and 25 and $4.05 in 2026, with estimated annual administration fees in 2024 of $23,136.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to authorize the city manager to renew the Delta Dental of Kansas agreement for 3 years at the per member per month rates of $4 in 2024 and 2025 and $4.05 in 2026, with estimated annual administrative fees in 2024 of $23,136. And I did think of one quick question. Is this an option, or does this automatically come with health insurance when somebody signs up?
It is part of our plan structure, so it's factored into one premium amount. Individuals don't have the ability to opt out.
'Cause I know some do, and I
Right.
hadn't thought to ask that. Thank you. Okay, we have a motion second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That item passes 5-0.
I got a quick question before we go to the next item. When is the actual enrollment?
Open enrollment will start in probably about a week. We like to do a week to a 10-day period in December for a 1-1 plan year.
So
If anyone has questions, they come see you.
Me, or I will send them to our resident benefit expert, Jennifer Perry, our benefits coordinator. She's in my office and she leads that process.
So we've referenced the fact that there is a rate increase, but for those listening at home, it might be good to quantify what those rate increases will be.
Yep. Yep, so I can refer to those real quick. And again, your action today wasn't necessarily taking action on the rates. It was to illustrate that we believe we have the ability to afford based on the current rates. But for our full-time employees, when we reference the 7.5% increase, for an individual, that equates to $127 per month. It has been $118 per month, and then obviously that's divided into two because it's by per pay period. So on an employee plus one, the increase is going from $264 to $284. And then on family, we are looking at moving from $318 to $342. And I will also note, on our family plan, I'm familiar, some programs will like add a surcharge depending on how many family members, and we do not have that. If it's part of a dependent in the family, then it's one price.
Even if you have 12 kids, huh?
Even if.
Okay, that leads us to item 6.3C.
Item 6.3C is to authorize the city manager to approve an amendment to the agreement with Tria Health for medication therapy management.
Okay, any questions or comments in the public? Okay, I'll accept a motion on this item.
Mr. Mayor, I move that this commission authorize the city manager to execute an addendum to the Tria Health agreement with Tria Health for medication therapy and management services for 2 years at the current rate of $6 per member per month plus claims and incentives costs for the programs with a projected total expense of $60,000.
Second.
We have a motion, a second, to authorize the city manager to execute an addendum to the Tria Health agreement with Tria Health for medication therapy management services for 2 years at the current rate of $6 per member per month, plus claims and incentives costs for programs with a projected total expense of $60,000. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That item also passes 5-0. Okay, Ms. Fisher, thank you very much. Okay, that will lead us to other business. Is there an item that a commissioner would like to bring before the group today?
I'd like to, now that the November 7th election has been certified, congratulate Mayor Hoppick and Commissioner Davis on their re-election and look forward to welcome Commissioner-elect Jerry Ivey to the commission. Congratulate him as well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes,
I
you. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Two issues, we probably couldn't do action today anyway. But this weekend, some parents of some of the Kansas Wesleyan students had contacted their advisor, Reverend Smith, about the fact that our Greyhound bus stop is at the Thomas Park entrance, and that the bus to Kansas City leaves at 3 in the morning. And he said, I just can't let my students stand on the side of the road, so he said, I'll go up there with them and make sure they get on the bus. And guilt was starting to take over, and I said, well, I can't let Alan go up there by himself. So I went up there, and sure enough, it's dark. They're not actually in the park, but there's a little service driveway parallel to 9th Street. And the bus, nice clean bus, nice bus driver. He was sitting there waiting. But it's not a place where you would drop your kid off at 2:45 and say, hey, call me when you get to Detroit or wherever they're going, because you might not see them. It's just next to a real dark place. Now, Greyhound has moved about 4 or 5 times since I've lived here, since '99, and I've heard the various reasons. But if there's any way that we can work with some business, parking lot owner, or parking lot with lights owner, somewhere where we could, and obviously need the bus companies' cooperation, a safer appearing place. For some students, this is the way they get home. And the bus to Wichita leaves at 4:25 in the morning. The one to Kansas City leaves at 3. So it's dark 12 months a year when those buses leave, and it is a rather scary prospect for not just parents of our students, but just for any of us if we wanted to take the bus at that time. Just see if we can. I know bus companies want to stay near the interstate because it's less time out of their schedule to get off the road and get back
What about
on.
the church out there? Just
Oh,
throwing
there's-
that out as
yeah.
an example,
You're
large
right.
parking lot and some shelter.
Right, and the other thing, right, there's no shelter. I mean, this happened to be a fairly temperate night, with nice sky and no wind or rain. But I would not want to imagine what it would be like on a winter night.
I can add, Commissioner Davis,
Mm-hmm.
that North Salina Community Development has been working on this for about the last 4 or 5 months. And they've gotten very little progress. Recently, Greg Stevens and Gary Schwartzendruber rode the bus to see how this all played out. There's 2 bus lines, the Greyhound and the B line.
Right.
The B line goes back and forth to Wichita. They have been able to work with the management of the B line. And this manager extended the offer to ride the bus and experience it firsthand, and I'm sure they would extend that to you as well. And they left like 4 in the morning and went to Wichita. And anyway, if you're interested, I got a full report here I can forward to you. But it is a concern with North Salina, just for the safety of the passengers, just the overall scope of it, people being dropped off in the middle of nowhere, middle of the night. And they're working on it, but it's a struggle.
Right, and I don't know if that bus is dropping people off, whether it's originating in Salina at that point. But certainly if you were dropped off there, unless someone knew you were coming, you're not going to be able, well, people have cell phones now, but there's no place to go, call, or wait for someone.
There is not. And that's a concern, and it's been discussed. So I'd invite you to attend the North Salina Community meeting, because that's where the information's at.
Yeah, and I think their prior business model was to work in cooperation with a business that had a lighted location and an indoors location.
And those bridges were burnt.
Yeah, I was trying to figure out a way to describe that, but yeah, that working relationship isn't working for them anymore.
Or even the bus that travels south from here picks up at the parking lot at 9th and Cloud, right where Harbor Freight is.
Well,
It's at least a lit parking lot.
it has been discussed a lot
yeah.
to try to partner with OCCK. They're into the transportation business, and because the people dropped off there, they might not even know what town they're in. And
True. But if there's any influence in the room that can help facilitate the process, I think it would be nice. The other thing, as we're preparing for the housing apartment complex, I happened to drive over to Menards the other night because I needed some stuff. And I was driving back, and I was imagining where these apartments are going to be. And then I imagined my daughter moving here with her 2 young girls, sending them to the grocery store at 7:30 at night. I think we need to start looking again at what our plan is going to be to get pedestrians, particularly children, safely across I-135 to the stores. Just as far as the entire, I know we're going to reconstruct that intersection there a little bit, but just what the comprehensive plan would be to get people safely across. Because there will be kids, there'll be kids on bikes, there'll be kids walking, to get them safely over to where all the stores and food, eating establishments are. And finish on good news, downtown looked really great. Walking in the parade, just to see all the trees lit up and the storefronts, I mean, it shows very, very beautiful. And SDA's done a great job with the season decor.
And I think Mr. Teutsch, I see sitting back there to tell you the new, what I want to put on the controls for the overhead structures is really nice.
Oh, they're working now.
Yep, just with the push of a button, we changed it overnight and had our red and green up and going, so,
Instant Christmas, huh?
yep.
Did we get any confirmation on whether the developer closed on the ground out there?
Yes, my understanding is they closed. We're working with the state in terms of transfer of funds and reimbursement, but my understanding is they started the process of closing. I don't know the exact status of it. The reason I looked is Sean Hennessy's been involved with that, but he's tied up with another matter at the moment.
Yeah, I believe Friday was the 10th working day, if I'm
Right.
correct.
Yep. So I know from their perspective, they initiated what they could, and we're working with the state in terms of a reimbursement and distribution of funds.
We can look forward to the for sale signs coming down.
Yeah, I would think so.
Okay.
Okay, anything else? Okay, this brings us to Citizens Forum. This is an opportunity for someone to come forward. If they have an item they'd like to share with the commission, we ask that you please give your name and have your comments for 3 minutes or less.
Norman, Salina. This is in the newspaper the 19th. Change is good. 1, Progress battery storage was voted down. Progress is going to come to an end. We voted that battery storage in the southeast part of the county. It's gone. So progress is coming to a halt. Number 2, swearing in a court of law upstairs. You need to attend that as a spectator and see what the swearing in words are. This is becoming a national issue. It also said, should law enforcement officers be held accountable financially for their misconduct? Yes. Also the mayors, the entire commissioners, city commissioners, committee administrators, county commissioners are going to be held accountable for your estates. Law enforcement should also lose their job misconduct. So it's in the paper the 19th. The state legislature is trying to increase the wages for legislators. So if you guys get your wages raised, are you going to double your time here? Because that's what they're talking in Topeka.
Don't think we've talked about raising our wages, so that's a whole different subject, so thank you.
Well, it's in the news.
That's the state level, not the city level. Okay, is there anyone else?
Rosemary Mai, Salina, Kansas, and to talk about the bus situation that Mr. Davis was talking about. I attended the meeting, the same meeting that Bill Longbine went to, and it has been a struggle for the North Salina people to get that bus route changed. And like Bill said, the Beeline is in favor of working with people, but Greyhound is dragging their feet. And the reason why it moves so often, according to that meeting, is because they trash the businesses, and no business wants them to be there. So, and if I'm not mistaken, when Norm said you voted the battery plant out, that was not the city commissioners, Norm, that was the county commissioners. So I just wanted to put that on record. Thank you.
And I guess I could ask Commissioner Longbine, when these places stop in like Wichita, and I don't know if the bus station stops, you know, like in McPherson. I remember years and years ago, it's been 50 years ago when I took the bus last time. You know, you stopped at every little town along the way. Do you know, do the other communities have a bus stop, an actual, you know, like we used to have, or do you know what they do in other communities?
They stop at businesses like that also, to my understanding, wasn't it, Bill?
Well, in Abilene, they have had the same situation as we've had in Salina. No businesses wants them on their property. And I have a picture here that Greg Stevens took of the bus stop in Abilene, it's a sign nailed to a tree, says bus stop.
Yeah. And DVAC was there at that meeting also.
Yeah, and
And they
DVAC
are struggling with it also because they do pick up some of their patients that come from the other communities, and they have to be out there to pick up those. And I know DVAC is not in favor of that site also, because they said it is scary at night, and because you don't know who's there waiting for the bus or who's getting off that bus, so.
Knock on wood, I guess maybe we've been fortunate we haven't had any incidents that I'm aware of, so let's just hope that we can
But
come up with a solution before we do have an incident.
I used
or
to
something.
ride the Greyhound bus when I was younger, and they did have Greyhound stops in that, which I don't understand why they stopped it, but that's something maybe we need to fight with Greyhound.
Yeah, I was just
don't know.
curious if other communities did or
Yeah.
not, so, okay,
Oh.
thank you.
I might add a little more to that now that I kind of refresh my memory from,
Took a while to kick in, didn't it?
yeah, the email. That when they got to Wichita, the bus went to the Wichita Transit Station, which I guess in terms of Salina, that would be the 7th Street transfer station or something like that. But it's a pretty major deal in Wichita. And KDOT is also has joined this conversation in that they subsidize the buses. So KDOT is going to get involved, and hopefully we can work out a solution and find a location.
So,
Commissioner, do you know how many people are getting on and off the bus in any given period of time? How many?
That B line is pretty limited, and I don't think anyone has any data on the Greyhound, but it was just a few people on this Wichita route, and they picked one up, dropped one off, picked one, and like 6 people total.
okay, is there anything else to come before the commission? Okay, if not, I will accept a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
Yeah, a motion a second to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? We will see everyone back here next Monday. Thank you.